father.
This is my son, Sam.
We were a family with a lot of potential. We could have done anything.
And that's Benjamin.
There's little Ben. We loved the fact that Ben and I were on the farm together. We were so close, our families were so close.
Ben was an excellent snake breeder. He genuinely cared about the animals far more than the money.
He found a woman that enjoyed steaks.
This little baby will go into the racks that are right behind Ben here.
I really, truly thought that they were a perfect couple.
And then, just out of nowhere, everything took a deep dive.
911, what's the address, emergency? Everything's on the ground and there's blood everywhere. You know what happened? No. Lily, I don't know where the snake is. Oh my God. My brother's dead.
It's fall 1987. 38-year-old Frank Rennick and his wife Kim are building a family home on 72 acres of farmland near Florence, Missouri.
We have a small circle drive where the truck is that will take you to the property.
Frank videotapes the work in progress to show his mother.
There's our beautiful gas tank, one of our highlights of our year tour.
Back in the 1980s, my parents bought a big, beautiful piece of land out in Montgomery County to build this home. It was a big deal for them.
So now this would be the look and approach of the house if you were driving down the driveway. There is the living room. On the end are Sam and Ben's bedrooms.
Frank and Kim intend for the new farmhouse to be their forever home, where they will raise their two infant sons, Sam and Ben.
This is Sam's room. As you can tell, it's not quite finished yet. We have half of the national forest in this scene. Leaving Sam's room, going into Ben's room.
They designed it and decorated it. They were excited.
Here, we're going out of Sam and Ben's room and we'll walk right into it. was in my bedroom. We're still getting along by the time this house is done. And if you would walk in that door, you'd walk into the side of the fireplace and see Kim saying, carrying more wood.
They loved this home more than anything. They were very, very happy out there.
We walked in the foyer towards the front door and turned right. We would go down the steps to the basement. They'll take us down to the office. We'll spend 90% of our time paying for this house.
Frank is the owner of Rennick Farm Pet Foods. The animal feed business is in his blood. He was a partner in his father's food company before he set up on his own.
My family had just sold Bow Wow Pet Foods. They were some of the first ones to sell bagged dog food at Walmart back in the 60s. They used the proceeds from that sale to purchase the land and then build that first home and start a business in Montgomery County. My parents were a lot of fun. They were very close. They loved each other very much. Frank always made it clear that Kim came first, we came second. My mother was everything to him.
Mom, on my hand.
In 1988, the Rennick family is living in a rental home while the farmhouse is under construction.
Let us introduce you to our family. This is my son, Sam. He's 3. And that's Benjamin. And this is my lovely wife, Kim. She's doing laundry right now. Something she does most of the time. Would you like to go through and see the house? We'd like for you to pay special attention to the hole in the carpet.
And then the gaudy light.
And the gaudy light. That's a cross between French provincial and bad taste.
My parents were always like big little kids. You know, they were always having fun.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, movie man.
Oh, Sam wants his picture taken. And who gave you that, Sam? Mom did.
Mom did.
That's me having fun on a little spring horse.
Let's take a movie of you riding it, okay, Sam?
I told the name of horse.
There's little Ben. We were tiny.
Mommy.
We were pretty similar when we were kids. You He was the smart, skinny version of me. We were very close.
In spring 1989, the big house build is complete. The family moves into their new home to enjoy life on the farm.
Ben and I spent our time outside enjoying the beautiful wildlife area that was out there.
I can pull my princess castle now.
Lots of hiking. I was looking for bugs. Ben was looking for reptiles, that kind of thing.
You want to see David?
But
Please.
here's Ben.
We were young and rambunctious little kids.
Daddy, go away, please.
Look here, this is your shirt. Ask.
Ben and I were born exactly 2 years and 2 days apart. So his birthday was August 4th and mine was August 6th.
This year, Frank's mom, Grandma Virginia, has come to join the celebrations in the new home.
We had one big birthday bash every year, the day between our 2 birthdays. This is my grandmother giving us a stuffed animal as a present. We loved our grandmother very much.
A giraffe.
We always had a good time celebrating together.
Happy birthday to you.
We were a family with a lot of potential. Yeah, we could have done anything.
What are you doing, Benjamin?
It's nice to see my baby brother again. He had a lot of life in him, you know.
Here, Ben. Be careful.
We were safe. We were very happy. But our lives changed. But that was hard.
Just 3 years after they move in, the Rennick family's dream home meets with disaster.
We were at a hotel at the time, and we were informed that there was an explosion. But by the time we got there, there wasn't much left. The main residence at the property was destroyed. I remember watching my mother. She was just weeping, and you could see the insulation falling out of the sky. We had carpet that was stuck in the trees. We lost about everything out there. This home meant the world to my mother.
Investigators conclude that a storage tank leaked 3,000 gallons of propane into the house.
There's our beautiful gas tank, one of our highlights of our year tour.
The explosion is so loud, local police think it's an earthquake.
Losing that house was devastating. Unfortunately, the gas explosion had a major impact on both Ben and I as children. Took a major toll on my parents. It was a different, world. It changed its trajectory. And looking back, I don't know why we didn't do something. It's hard to imagine what Ben would feel now about where things ended up.
After a gas explosion destroys his home in 1992, Frank Rennick moves his family into a trailer and starts building a new farmhouse. That same year, the Rennicks receive more devastating news.
Immediately after we had the house explosion, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. It was kind of a 1-2 punch at the time. When my mother got her diagnosis, I was probably about 8 years old. Ben was about 6 years old.
Let's put the clean towels up.
She was going to have a double mastectomy and going through the chemo treatments and the radiation. She was a trooper, though. Kim was very strong. We would keep the boys during the time when Frank would be taking her to her doctor's appointments or if she was in the hospital. The boys pretty much, probably for the majority of their childhood, that's all they knew. Their mom being sick.
When we were young, my father encouraged us to have exotic animals as pets. We go outside. We always find big black snakes. And I remember we had caught one time and it was giving birth. It had a whole bunch of little baby eggs. And Ben thought that was fascinating. Ben had a snake at a pretty young age. And it wasn't too long after that he started experimenting with breeding. And that definitely grew his interest.
Fast forward to 2002. The Rennick family moves into their new farmhouse, 10 years after the explosion. Dad Frank builds for 15-year-old Ben a reptile house to help foster his son's fascination with snakes.
Most kids, they'll have a little aquarium with a gerbil in it, or they'll have a puppy or whatever. Not this kid. He had a wall full of aquariums with big snakes in them.
The Rennick family has just 5 years in their new farmhouse before tragedy strikes once more in 2009.
My mother passed on the property. It was New Year's Day. We had to be strong for her. That's what she would have wanted.
It was hard on the boys. And then for Frank, it was probably hardest on him. He lost the love of his life.
That farm meant a lot to my mother and to my family, and to Ben. She made Ben and I promise we'd take care of that land and save it for our children, and because it meant the world to them. Ben decided to stay there, to live on that property. That's where he built his business as well.
Ben founds Rennick Reptiles to sell designer snakes worldwide.
The head is a yellow head. This is not one of the white-headed ghosts.
Rennick Reptiles was a reptile breeding facility that focused mostly on designer reptiles that had mutations and colors and patterns.
Ben promotes his company at snake shows across the U.S.
I'm here with Ben Rennick from Rennick Reptiles. Ben, what do we have showcasing today?
All right. Here's some really cool stuff. This is a campfire. This is a toasted marshmallow. And that is a s'mores, which is a super itchy calico Leicester spider pinstripe cinnamon.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Ben was an excellent snake breeder. He genuinely cared about the animals far more than the money.
In 2010, Ben meets 22-year-old Lindley Gallatin at a friend's party. A few weeks after the party, Ben introduces Lindley to his brother Sam and his sister-in-law Allie.
Sam and I were at Frank's house and he brought her over to introduce her to us. And she seemed really nice and sweet.
They had a lot of the same interests, and he found a woman that enjoyed snakes, reptiles, and didn't mind being around them. I thought he was pretty lucky to find a second person that had an interest like that.
Lindley has a 3-year-old son from a previous relationship.
Ben took right to him. I really, truly thought that they were a perfect couple.
Ben couldn't stop talking about how happy he was with Lindley. I think they'd been together for less than a year before they got pregnant with their first child.
Lindley gives birth to a daughter on March 17th, 2012.
She was our bright, shining star. And, gosh, she meant the world to Ben. Ben was very caring, doting father, and took very good care of those kids.
Away from Ben and Lindley's baby bubble, Frank Rennick's business is in deep financial trouble.
In 2012, both my wife and I were working with Frank at his company at the time. He had called us and asked us to help him with the company after my mother's passing. Unfortunately, we realized that he was in dire condition. We had the postal inspector stop by our door and give us a cease and desist order for the company. It had appeared my father had committed mail fraud. We determined that a lot of the funds that he had taken were likely going towards my mother's medical expenses and her bills.
I understood from all of it that Frank was possibly going to be indicted, and he was looking at prison time.
We would have lost the family farm. Ben would have lost his home. Ben would have lost his business. I don't think Frank was willing to let that happen.
24 hours before the federal investigators, the FBI, were going to come in and take possession of all of his assets, the farm and everything, Frank committed suicide. It was Ben that found him on Father's Day.
It was hard, especially after losing my mother. We were still relatively young at the time. He's very missed.
Frank's suicide stops the FBI investigation and prevents them from seizing his assets. Frank's will divides his estate between his sons. Ben inherits the 72-acre farm and farmhouse. Sam receives $1.2 million cash on the understanding that he helps Ben maintain the property.
He was trying to incentivize me to come back and work with Ben. I should have just fled. When we got to the property, there were several hundred thousands of dollars worth of work that needed to be done, and the money allowed me to do that.
Sam and I moved out to the farm after Frank had killed himself. We were helping contribute with the bills there, and we had our own home, and we couldn't afford both places.
We loved the fact that Ben and I were on the farm together. It was nice that we were so close, our families were so close.
We would have dinners, or Sunday I would cook something and they would come over. I would watch the kids a lot when Ben and Lily would go out on their date nights, or when they'd go out to the reptile shows on the weekends.
But behind the scenes, a huge rift is developing within the family over the farm's finances.
It was costing us so much money to maintain and keep the property. I was going broke. I couldn't keep doing it. Ben was the sole owner at the time. We always had the understanding that we would get things worked out. Ben was the safest bet in town. Nothing was ever going to happen to Ben.
I don't think any of us could have expected what happened after that.
In the aftermath of his father's suicide, Ben Rennick pours his energy into growing his snake breeding business.
And then we got this right here. And this is a firefly sunset.
Rennick Reptiles skyrocketed success because Ben was just an amazing entrepreneur.
So this is what happens whenever you add fire, pastel, and sunset together. Wow. And I don't know what this is.
He understood marketing and knew how to push things out there on the internet to get more business. Lindley would help manage some of the work. She would go in there and scrub tubs down at the end of the night if needed, or she would help clean the babies. It took a lot of work off of him.
And we will do this with every single clutch that hatches out. We try to get them in the boxes as fast as possible, keep them all together. And then this little baby will go into the racks with our other babies that are right behind Ben here.
Ben and Lindley tie the knot on April 14th, 2014 in St. Charles, Missouri. Lindley helped to make Rennick Reptiles a commercial success. After the wedding, Ben agrees to help Lindley start a spa business.
Lindley wanted to open the spa because it's something that she's always been passionate about. Ben helped financially get the business up and going off the ground.
Business-savvy Lindley invites local YouTubers to make a video about the spa and spread the word about her new venture. It looks like Lindley and her employee Ashley are naturals in front of the camera.
Can I get your name? Hi, I'm Lindley. I'm the owner here.
Oh, well, thanks for having us.
Ashley, I'm the spa manager.
Lindley's role was to run the spa. She was also a massage therapist there as well. She was excited to be able to do her own thing.
But the optimism that Lindley shows in the promotional video is short-lived. Her spa struggles financially. Ben questions why the project he's bankrolling is failing to turn a profit.
Ben was very frustrated because she was working a lot of hours and just still not making it happen. It just didn't quite make sense.
Around the same time, Sam and wife Allie are struggling to afford the upkeep on the family farm.
It was very, very expensive to be out there. We had to put a lot of money into that property to keep it up. It was a draining experience. I wasn't making the kind of money that Ben was at the time, and I don't think I ever wanted to leave the farm. Unfortunately, I had everyone under the sun telling me that's what I should do because I was going to go broke trying to keep the farm.
Sam and I did sell some of the furniture on the house. We had a conversation with Ben, and he didn't have a problem with us selling anything on the property. There was one day that Lindley sent a really long, angry text message to Sam about selling the furniture and how it was not fair. And I really just kind of blew up, explaining how much Sam and I had sacrificed to keep the property and to save it from being sold at auction when we first moved out there. After the angry text message that Lindley sent, my opinion of her definitely changed. It seemed so out of character. It wasn't the Lindley that we had known before. Sam and Ben talked about it and smoothed things over, but unfortunately, Ben and I did not really talk after that.
We were coexisting on that property, trying to make things work, and it was a unique relationship with Ben and I, especially that year.
Then in early 2017, the years that Ben has invested into building up Rennick Reptiles promised to pay off and help ease the family's money troubles.
Ben's business was growing, and he was coming up on a big transaction. He had a big sale that we knew about, and he was very excited about.
Ben had a client that was looking for a deal upwards of $1 million for his collection of ball pythons. The first payment for Ben's collection happened in February of 2017. And then, just out of nowhere, everything took a deep dive.
On June 8th, 2017, just 4 months after Ben makes his big sale, 911 receives a call from his breeding facility. The caller is Ben's wife, Lindley.
911 with the address emergency. Okay, I'm sorry, what'd you say? Husband's on the ground and there's blood everywhere. Okay, you do not know why there's blood everywhere? No, I saw him and I ran outside. Okay, so you have no idea what happened? No. Okay, is he conscious right now or breathing? I don't know, my brother-in-law just went inside. Yes. Okay, so you've got everybody on the way. Do you know what happened? No. It might have been a snake. Lily, I don't know where the snake is. Oh my God. Okay, tell me exactly what you see. What's going on there? Oh my God. My brother's dead.
Law enforcement raced to Ben Rennick's snake breeding facility following his wife Lindley's call to 911.
The Montgomery County Sheriff's Department arrived first. We're all from Missouri. It's a rural state. We're comfortable around snakes for the most part. Being around 3,000 plus was different. It made the crime scene slightly challenging.
Yeah, I'm not good with that. I'm not scared of snakes, but I'm scared of this one.
You have Lindley Rennick, Ben's wife, who is beside herself, distraught.
I understand you have an anaconda? The whole building's full of snakes.
The deputies are essentially going in here thinking that we're looking for a loose snake that's killed somebody. And what they also find inside is Ben Rennick's body.
We're sure there's no snakes around the victim?
Yeah.
It's a fairly gruesome scene. There's blood pooled mainly around his head, laying on his back on the ground, and some very obvious disfigurement with his head.
Fellas, something got him. Paramedics said there's a bite mark on him, so there's a snake loose in here. So watch your hands.
Do we have anybody we could call to deal with an anaconda?
I'm gonna kill it. We'll see it.
Good.
At first, Sam thought it might have been a snake that killed Ben. Sam was not familiar with snakes, and on Ben's body there was a part where if you didn't know what you were looking at, you might think that it was a bite from a snake. We learned very quickly that was not the case. We found shell cases underneath the racks. We discovered several gunshot wounds in the back, as well as one to the back of the head.
Now we've gone from a snake hunt to a shooting scene. Immediately on their radar, Sam Rennick and Lindley Rennick.
Missouri State Highway Patrol deploys specialist officers to help with the murder investigation.
Another investigator, Sergeant Matt Cook, and I, we interviewed Sam, Ben's brother, as well as Lindley at the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department.
Sergeant Cook and Corporal Faust interview Lindley Rennick first.
Walk us through it.
Just like from the beginning or from...
Second this afternoon.
Lindley the spa, and the only thing that was different towards the end of the day is that Ben wasn't answering his phone or wasn't answering his text messages. She picked up the kids on her own, which is something that Ben would have normally done, and she continued to call him and text him on her way to the snake farm. She talked about the struggles that the families had with money and how the trust from their late father was processed. She painted a picture that there was a real issue with Sam.
Was there any family issues?
Like between Sam and yeah. Just a lot of stuff financially with Sam and Allie not being able to pay bills. We have an okay relationship, but it's still a little rocky.
She just kept steering us towards the thought that Sam may have had something to do with this.
What is Sam's demeanor like?
He has kind of a depressed personality. He's overly driven. He's just so different than Ben. He's a lot more in your face and professional.
Next, investigators interview Sam Rennick.
Police are suspicious of Sam early on. He is someone with a strained relationship with the murder victim.
You said a couple times you guys weren't close. Has that been your whole life? Or was there a falling out, or since your father's passing, or?
I think there was a dispute over we were going to split the farm up, and there was this argument about money, how much money I'm going to give him for 50% of the land, and that was all before I decided I can't afford this land, even if I buy it.
He says that Ben is always talking about money, he's always talking about his success in his business.
He liked to brag a lot. He's always talking money. How much money he made this day, how much he made on that transaction.
At this point, law enforcement are wondering what motive would he have had to kill Ben, where he was at the time, what his story is. They ask him to take a polygraph test, and as well, they want to do what's called a gunshot residue test. This will let them know if the person has recently fired a weapon.
Well, I provided the police with the shirt off my back, my cell phone, all my personal social media accounts, everything imaginable to try and rule myself out quickly.
Sam's polygraph test comes back fine. It's negative for gunshot residue as well.
We ruled Sam out as a suspect with Lindley. We had no probable cause to build on. So we let both of them go at that point.
The Rennick family holds Ben's funeral on June 18th, 2017. Within 30 days, Sam receives news about the future of the family farm.
After my brother's service, Lindley isolated herself and the children completely from everybody else. And that's when we were given notice to vacate the farm, that she had intended to sell the property. When Ben was murdered, she inherited the family farm. We lived on that property. Our children lived on that property together. I was living there with my children. It was a shock.
Lindley eventually sells the property for $740,000.
Initially, we could have never imagined that Lindley would have any involvement in this, but after the sale of the farm, we realized something was wrong.
Less than a month after Ben's murder, Lindley attends a follow-up interview with investigators. She reveals that her and Ben's relationship was in trouble.
And during that interview, that's when we discover about an affair that she has. She told us in the beginning that they'd had a good marriage, and that wasn't the case.
She talks about Eric Bremer. He is helping Lindley market the spa. This business relationship eventually evolves into a sexual one. Essentially, she's cheating on Ben at the time of Ben's murder. During this part of the investigation, the State Highway Patrol is looking at messages between Ben and Lindley about Lindley's spa.
And just about a month leading up to the murder, they're fighting almost constantly.
These messages suggest that the relationship is in a really rocky point. It's another crack in Lindley's story.
Lindley was having financial troubles at her spa. Ben was going to find out about the affairs. Her world was kind of crumbling. He just had a $1.2 million deal that was about to close for his snake business. She had a lot to gain. for my brother's murder.
Police are beginning to think that Lindley knows a lot more about Ben's death than she's telling them.
Approximately 4 months after the murder, Lindley consented to a polygraph examination. She failed it, and then I did a post-polygraph interview, which then turned into an interrogation. For the next day, she hired a lawyer.
Investigators are still missing crucial pieces of evidence. They're missing a gun. They're just missing a lot of good physical evidence to tie her to committing a crime. Police are circling, watching. They're waiting for that right piece of evidence to come on that's going to crack this thing even wider open. And then a tip to law enforcement essentially exposes this whole thing for them.
Almost 3 years after Ben Rennick's murder, the police catch a break. A witness comes forward with vital information.
On January 14th of 2020, the Missouri State Highway Patrol hears from an inmate at the Boone County, Missouri jail named Brandon Blackwell, who tells them that he's got information on a murder case that they've been working for a few years now. Brandon Blackwell is a man in his 30s who says that he was in a previous relationship with Lindley Rennick. A relationship that started in 2017 while she and Ben were married and went until about the end of 2019. This relationship does not end well.
They ended up fighting, and that led to her filing orders of protection against him and having him charged with stalking.
While he waits for his sentencing date, Blackwell reveals to investigators that he wants to share information about Ben Rennick's murder.
Brandon told us this story first and foremost because he was in jail and he was looking to lessen his charges, but I think he was also ready to do the right thing. And he proceeded to lay out this entire story that was dead on.
Brandon says that Lindley Rennick confessed to me that she killed her husband. Brandon tells them that Lindley conspired with one of her coworkers, Ashley Shaw, and they go seek out another ex, Michael Humphrey. He has not talked to Lindley Rennick in several years at this point, when suddenly, out of the blue in the summer of 2017, she and Ashley Shaw just appear in his life. Lindley tells him about her rocky relationship with her husband. They're hoping that Michael will help them kill Ben at the farm.
Within a day, arrest and probable cause statements were made for Ashley Shaw, Lindley Rennick, and Michael Humphrey.
I got a call the morning of when she was going to be arrested. They let us know that it was finally time. The relief was huge.
Investigators interview Michael Humphrey on January 16th, 2020. He claims that he agreed to accompany Lindley to the snake farm, but not to kill Ben.
She has issues and stuff like that. She wants me to go with her out there to talk to Ben. I'm not one of, if you can't tell just my demeanor, I'm not one to go and attack somebody.
When they arrived at the facility, she introduced Michael as someone who may be interested in buying some snakes.
She had to hand me a gun, and I kind of, not to say I act like a bitch, but kind of did, and then I kind of just shoved it back at her like that, like whatever. And then she starts talking to him like nothing's wrong. And I was like looking over at some of their cage things, the little trays that they had with snakes and stuff in them. And then all of a sudden shots rang out. I ducked like this and everything. I looked back up. She still got the gun out like this and everything. I turned around and ran towards the door. I heard probably another one, maybe two, I don't know. And by the time I'm standing by the car, I asked her, what the just happened, you know what I mean? And she's like, we gotta go.
Lindley Rennick's arrested on January 16th of 2020, and she is accused of and charged with first-degree murder and armed criminal action.
Investigators also arrest her co-conspirators, Michael Humphrey and Ashley Shaw, for first-degree murder.
Ashley Shaw, she decided to get a lawyer and then ultimately cooperated. In exchange, she was granted immunity from prosecution.
Ashley says that Lindley claimed that Ben sexually assaulted her. Lindley worried that Ben's lawyer would help him win custody of the children following a divorce. Her only option was to kill Ben. Ashley says that she believed Lindley's story and agreed to help her. Investigators discover messages between Ben and Lindley that detail problems in their sex life. But Lindley reported no sexual assault to law enforcement, nor did she mention one in her interviews with them following Ben's death. Michael Humphrey and Lindley Rennick stand trial separately. In October 2021, a jury finds Michael Humphrey guilty of first-degree murder and armed criminal action.
Michael Humphrey and his legal team ask the state, if you replace the first-degree murder conviction with second-degree murder, we'll show you where the gun is that Lindley used to kill Ben.
We didn't recover the firearm. He kept it in his possession the whole time. We have the firearm that was used, and it matches the casings.
Forensic tests on the firearm failed to recover DNA or fingerprints that prove that either Lindley or Michael pulled the trigger.
Due to Michael's cooperation, he still has life in prison, but now he has the possibility of parole.
Lindley's trial begins on December 6, 2021, in Boone County, Missouri.
The prosecution was able to set forth a very good case against Lindley Rennick. The financial problems and the relationship problems, her multiple affairs.
When Lindley finally took the stand, we were shocked. Lindley is not a religious person at all, ever. And she got up there with a big cross necklace and started putting on a show.
I walked, down the aisle, and I walked up behind Michael. Ben was back around the corner, and then Michael turned around, and I saw a gun in his hands, and then I heard shots ring out, and I screamed, and I ran outside. And then I heard more shots go off, and everything just went numb.
She testifies Michael was the one that brought the gun. Michael was the one that killed Ben. The verdicts came in the afternoon of Thursday, December 9th of 2021.
The jury will decide both the verdict and the sentence.
Senator, please rise. Verdict as to count one, we the jury, having found the defendant, Lindley Rennick, guilty of murder in the second degree, assess and declare punishment for murder in the second degree at 13 years. Verdict as to count two, we the jury, having found the defendant, Lindley Rennick, guilty of armed criminal action, assess and declare the punishment for armed criminal action at 3 years. Are these your verdicts? So say each of you. Okay.
Investigators have been pushing hard that Lindley Rennick was the one that shot and killed Ben. A lot of people in the courtroom were shocked at this verdict.
16 years total. To this day, I truly believe that she put 8 bullets to my brother.
I'm sorry, this is really gross.
I definitely miss Ben pretty much every day. I had a son, and he got the name Rennick, so he's named after Ben.
I wish I could have had a conversation with him before he died, before he was killed. I would tell him that I was sorry and that I loved him.
Losing my mother was hard. Losing my father was hard. Losing Ben was unthinkable. After my parents passed, Ben was all I had. He was the last family member I had left, and he meant the world to me. He will be forever missed.